Hello, welcome back to another Sunday School Bible class. I'm so glad you're here. Today we are on a lesson entitled, The Raising of Lazarus from the Dead. About a week after Jesus spoke about his church to Peter and the other apostles, he took Peter, James, and John up a small mountain. As Jesus began to pray, his appearance changed so that his face and clothing shone as bright as the sun. And as the three apostles looked, they saw Moses and Elijah standing next to Jesus. Moses and Elijah were talking to Jesus about how he was going to die at Jerusalem. Suddenly a cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from heaven said, "This is my beloved Son. Hear him." Peter, James, and John were very scared. When the voice passed, the three apostles saw Jesus standing alone. He told them not to tell anyone about this until after his resurrection. Then Jesus came down the mountain with his disciples and went to the other cities and towns to preach and teach. As Jesus healed so many people and told so many that their sins were forgiven, the religious leaders accused Jesus of blasphemy. Blasphemy is when a mere man claims to be God. It was a very serious sin that they accused Jesus of. Of course, Jesus really was God, which he was able to prove by all the miracles and power that he showed them. Yet they still did not believe him. One day, while Jesus was beyond the Jordan River, he received word that his very good friend Lazarus was very sick. Jesus loved Lazarus and his two sisters, Martha and Mary, and knew them well, for he had often stayed at their home with his apostles when he traveled. When Jesus heard that Lazarus was sick, he did not immediately go to him, but he stayed and said, "This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified thereby." And Jesus stayed 2 days more at the place where he was. After 2 days, Jesus, knowing that Lazarus died, said to the apostles, "Our friend Lazarus is sleeping, but I am going to wake him up." They did not understand, so Jesus said to them plainly, "Lazarus is dead, and I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, to the intent that ye may believe. Nevertheless, let us go unto him." Lazarus had lived in a town named Bethany, which was very close to Jerusalem. Therefore, many Jewish people came from Jerusalem to Bethany, to the home of Lazarus, to comfort his sisters Martha and Mary. By the time Jesus and his apostles got there just outside of town, Lazarus had been in the grave for 4 days already. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she ran to meet him, but her sister Martha, or Mary rather, stayed in the house. When Martha reached Jesus, she said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, whatever you will ask God, God will give it to you." Jesus said to her, "Your brother shall rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day." Jesus said unto her, "I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this?" Martha said, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world." When she said this, she went back to the house and called for her sister Mary secretly, saying, "The Master calleth for you." As soon as Mary heard that Jesus was near, she quickly went to him just outside the town. Many of the Jews thought that she went to the grave to cry, so they followed her. When Mary came to Jesus, she worshipped him and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her crying, and all the Jews that came with her, he groaned in his spirit and said, "Where have you laid him?" So they took Jesus to the gravesite, and Jesus cried. Some of the people murmured, saying, "Could not this man, who did so many miracles, have cured his own friend Lazarus?" Jesus groaned again. The grave of Lazarus was like a cave with a stone in the front of it. Jesus therefore commanded that they take away the stone. Martha said, "Lord, by this time his body has decayed somewhat and will smell, because Lazarus had been dead for 4 days already." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if ye believed, you would see the glory of God?" Then they took away the stone, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, "Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me, and I knew that thou hearest me always. But because of the people which stood by, I said it, that they may believe that thou hast sent me." And when he had thus spoken, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come forth!" As the people looked, they saw a figure of the body of Lazarus standing and moving out of the grave, all covered with grave clothes, and his face covered with a napkin. Jesus said unto them, "Untie him and let him go." The huge crowd of people were amazed. No one had ever seen anything like this before. People started running and spreading the word how Jesus raised a man from the dead who had been in the grave for 4 days.
What happened? See? Jesus of Nazareth. I saw it with my own eyes. Lazarus was dead. He's alive!
Many more people believed on Jesus. The people really had no excuse for not believing that Jesus was God, because the scriptures that they had studied every week predicted that the Messiah was going to do these same type of miracles, and actually saw these things being fulfilled exactly as they were written in the scriptures. So what they had read about the coming Messiah in the scriptures was actually happening right in front of their eyes. Despite all of this, the religious leaders, because of their jealousy, would not believe. And after Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, the religious leaders made up their mind that they would have Jesus put to death. Little did they know that Jesus was going to allow them to do this, so that he could die for our sins, rise from the dead, and ascend to heaven, so that we could be part of his kingdom someday and live with him forever. Keep coming and learn how all this happens. See you next time. Bye-bye.